This evening with our invocation from High Council Member Brian Burnham. If you would please come forward. And as he's coming forward, I would ask all people wishing to speak to, when you approach the microphone, make sure the button is pressed so the green collar is on, and speak into the microphone. You may proceed, sir.
I'm Brian Burnham from the Liberty, Missouri Stake, and I'm a member of the High Council, and I'm honored to have the opportunity to be with you today. And you're all welcome. That's the High Council of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Welcome to come. Father in heaven, as we gather here for this meeting, we come in a humble spirit as servants of those in our community. We are thankful for the privilege we have of meeting and grateful for the beautiful weather today. And we're thankful for the trust that thou hast placed in us and that the members of our community have placed in us. We pray for these leaders here that they will be blessed and inspired and led by thy Spirit as they sit in council and make decisions and help improve our community and defend the rights that are sacred to us. We thank thee for thy Son and his example for us, and pray that we will be blessed as we ponder the welfare of others and seek to improve it. And we ask for these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Please join me in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Nolte?
Here.
Commissioner Withington?
Here.
Commissioner Lawson?
Here.
Commissioner Wagner?
Here.
Commissioner Johnson?
Here.
Commissioner Thompson?
Here.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Here.
Thank you. That brings us to approval of the agenda. Is there a motion related to the approval of this evening's agenda?
Yes, sir. I move to approve tonight's agenda as written.
Motion been made for the approval of this evening's agenda as written. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, you are recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Withington?
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson?
Yes.
Commissioner Wagner?
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
Next on our agenda is our public comments. Are there any members of the public wishing to comment on any issues at this time? Seeing none, that brings us to our consent agenda. Administrator?
The consent agenda allows the Commission to act upon items considered to be routine and approved in one motion. These may include items that have been reviewed by the Commission in a prior session. There will be no separate discussion unless the Commissioner requests that an item be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. There are 9 items on the consent agenda this evening. The first item is Commission meeting minutes from February 8th. Resolution 2024-67, which is approving invoice payments for the county from February 10th through February 21st for 487 invoices totaling $1,789,006.44. Resolution 2024-62 is approving a grant application with the Missouri Department of Transportation for the dedicated impaired driving enforcement program for the Sheriff's Office. Resolution 2024-63 is approving the grant application with the Missouri Department of Transportation for the DWI saturation enforcement program with the Sheriff's Office. Resolution 2024-64 is approving the grant application with the Missouri Department of Transportation for the Occupant Protection Enforcement Grant for the Sheriff's Office. Resolution 2024-65 is approving the grant application for the Missouri Department of Transportation for the Hazardous Moving Violation Grant with the Sheriff's Office. Resolution 2024-66 is approving the grant application with the Missouri Department of Transportation for the Youth Alcohol Enforcement Program for the Sheriff's Office. Resolution 2024-71 is approving the interagency cooperative agreement between the Clay County Sheriff's Office and Harrison County Sheriff's Office for the transfer of 4 Evans dispatch consoles. and Resolution 2024-72, approving an interagency cooperative agreement with the Clay County Sheriff's Office and Ray County Sheriff's Office for the transfer of a 2001 trailer.
Thank you. Is there a motion concerning the consent agenda this evening? Commissioner Johnson.
Yes, sir. Move to approve the consent agenda.
Motion has been made for the approval of the consent agenda. Is there any discussion or comment? Seeing none, you are recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Withington?
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson?
Yes.
Commissioner Wagner?
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. That brings us to this evening's regular agenda. First item on the agenda is 2024-68. Administrator.
Resolution 2024-68 is a consideration of invoice payments for the Clay County Prosecutor's Office from February 10th to February 21st. There are 14 invoices totaling $3,216.88.
Thank you. Is there a motion related to 2024-68? Commissioner Johnson.
Move to approve 2024-68.
Motion has been made for the approval of 2024-68. Is there any comment or question? Seeing none, you are recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Withington?
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson?
Yes.
Commissioner Wagner?
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson?
I recuse myself.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Motion passes 5 in favor, 1 recusal.
Resolution 2024-70 is a consideration of approving a revocable event license for the Smithville High School Booster Club for the 2024 Smithville High School Polar Plunge event to take place at Smithville Lake. And Interim Director of Parks is here to provide information.
Please proceed.
John Davis, Interim Parks Director. Tonight you have a special event request from the Smithville High School Student Council for a polar plunge event they would like to host March 17th at Camp Branch Beach, Smithville Lake. This event is to raise funds for the Special Olympics. They have provided an itinerary and cleared and have several agencies such as the Sheriff's Office, Fire Department, and Ambulance District and YMCA there to provide support for the event. I have a representative from the school district and here for questions if you have any.
Is this a reoccurring event, or is this the first time for this event?
This is their first annual.
I was going to say a lot of these are sometimes reoccurring, so I hadn't seen this one before, so I just wanted to double check.
Yes, sir.
Very good. Is there anyone else that has any questions or comments? Seeing none, is there anyone else who would like to make their views known on this issue? Very well. Seeing none, is there a motion for 2024-70? Commissioner Johnson.
Move to approve 2024-70.
Motion has been made for the approval of 2024-70. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, you are recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Withington?
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson?
Yes.
Commissioner Wagner?
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. Last item on this evening's regular agenda is 2024-73. Administrator.
Resolution 2024-73 is consideration of the approval of the Clay County Drug and Alcohol Policy. And Director Callahan from HR is here. The commission has discussed this over several meetings, but we're here to answer any questions.
Please proceed.
Okay, good evening, Commissioners. Kim Callahan, HR Director. After our last meeting, the list of safety-sensitive positions was requested by the Commissioners, and this was sent out this week. I am here requesting approval of 2024-73, and I am available for any further questions this evening.
Are there any commissioners wishing to ask any questions or have any comments they would care to make at this time? Seeing none? Oh, no, I'm sorry. Commissioner Carpenter, I believe you were seeking recognition.
Thank you. No questions. Just to speak on the resolution. So I made the decision I'm going to vote against it this evening, and just want to share why. My view on this is basically boils down to was hoping to find a compromise on this that I could feel comfortable supporting. I think when we're talking about issues of constitutional rights, it's a thing that requires an extra level of caution and scrutiny. On this particular issue, my view is, well, anytime you're talking about abrogating or in some way limiting a constitutional right, you really, the courts have found you need to show a compelling public interest, state interest, and it also has to be as narrowly tailored as possible. On the first piece of that, a compelling interest, I think that there's room for some common ground on that. I think certainly a case can be made that there's a compelling interest, especially with regard to the safety-sensitive positions. Personally, I would want to see some more empirical evidence to suggest, for example, that with certain, we talked about folks who deal with juveniles, that sort of thing. I would prefer to see some empirical evidence that would show that, say, somebody who's a legal recreational cannabis user is a higher risk to juveniles than, say, a legal recreational alcohol user, for example. So that being said, I'm willing to acknowledge there's at least the possibility of some kind of compelling interest there with regard to public safety. So my concern is really more on the narrowly tailored side of things. I think the spirit of safety sensitive was really intended to cover folks who do things like work with heavy machinery. Certainly, I think I'm comfortable having a separate set of rules for our law enforcement deputies. My concern is that with the list, in the spirit of what is intended by safety sensitive, I think the list we've come up with is a bit overly broad, in my view. I don't know what the percentage of employees that would be covered under it is, but I'm guessing it's pretty high, maybe 90%. I'm not sure. So in other words, we're basically just having a blanket ban, prohibition on what is a constitutional right. And, I know there's some disagreement as to whether it should be in the Constitution or not. But we have a democratic process for a reason. It's played out, big overwhelming majority of residents of Clay County voted in favor of both medical marijuana and recreational marijuana. It also passed statewide. So if we were going to do a narrowly tailored version, I think that's a version I could get behind with a handful of safety-sensitive positions carved out. As it stands, because I think we're carving out the overwhelming majority of the employees of the county, I think to abrogate this particular constitutional right would be out of order. Now, I think there's a case to be made that we're not directly taking away a person's right to use cannabis. All we're doing is taking away their right to employment, in the public sector, Clay County government. But I think it's fair to say that when you take away somebody's right to employment attached to their utilization of a constitutional right, there's some issues there. And I would encourage folks to consider if we did this with other constitutional rights, and there's a whole bunch of the ones you could think of, if we were to tie that to prohibition of employment, especially in a public sector setting like this, I think that would be potentially problematic. So for those reasons, I'm going to vote no. I'm not looking for others to join me. I understand we've got to have a policy in place, and there are mixed views on this one. Just the compromise I was looking for would have been one that had some prohibition for a narrowly tailored safety-sensitive position, and in my view, this doesn't quite meet that standard. And I'm also concerned that it does at some point open us up to somebody deciding to pursue that line of argument legally, and I would prefer to avoid that if possible. So those are my thoughts. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Withington?
Does the county currently have a drug policy in place?
Yes, and we test all new hires.
So if we already have a policy, what's this policy gonna, is it replacing the current policy?
Right, it's adding on the safety-sensitive positions.
So it probably would have been easier to send us a list of what wasn't safety sensitive, because it seems like 95% of probably the positions are listed as safety sensitive. Have we talked to risk management to see if there's a risk for not implementing this?
Right, and I did speak with Tom McGuire about that and sent him this updated policy. And they're kind of waiting to see if there are any lawsuits. I spoke to him earlier that they don't have an issue with what I sent him.
Do they have an issue if we don't and we just keep our current policy?
Well, let me see. Would you like to speak on that, or? Sure. He's here, so.
When you come up to comment, please identify yourself for the audio recordings, and please proceed.
Yeah, I'm Tom McGuire. I'm with CBIZ Insurance Services. We handle the property and casualty insurance for Clay County. We also work with probably, I don't know, somewhere between 60 and 70 municipal accounts in the Kansas City region. It's all over the board what people are doing. There's a lot of wait and see approach to this. It's from just a pure insurance standpoint. There's been no movement from the carrier side to draw any distinctions or make any new exclusions or anything to this. They're truly in kind of a wait and see approach, which is interesting because there's other states that have had this for quite a bit longer. And, you know, carriers are slow to move on things like this because they don't want to set any precedent themselves on that, so they kind of defer a little bit. So from our standpoint, what we would say is either way, you need to be just, what word am I looking for? Just consistent with how you are implementing the program. And if you stayed with what you're doing currently, we would be fine with that, and if you wanted to institute something that was a little more proactive, you know, we could deal with that as well. So I'm going to talk around it is basically what I'm going to say.
So while I have you here, do we have any statistics on how many claims we've had for somebody being impaired on the job?
I do not have that currently. I could go back and try to find that for the data that we have. We've been the broker for, I think this is our second year, but I think we could get some information that goes back a little bit further than that, because I think you've been with Travelers for a little while, and so we could go back and crunch that data for you and get it to you.
Yeah, I would like to see those. I would like to see those numbers to see if there's even really a problem, you know, or if this is just somebody pushing a new policy just to push a new policy. So yeah, if you could get that, that'd be great.
Certainly.
All right. And Kim, do you have any of that data that you know off the top of your head? If we're going to vote on this tonight, I'd kind of like to.
So you're asking.
Come on up to the microphone so it can be recorded.
Kim Callahan,
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to know if we've had any claims for impairment from, you know, marijuana or alcohol.
Yeah, I can tell you this year, no. Now, as far as the risk side, yes, no.
So if this isn't a problem, why are we deciding to do this now?
Just, this is our first step in making a change. We don't have to. We can stay the way that it is.
Well, I think the problem for us in the clarification is, to your point about what's our current policy. Our current policy is we do pre-employment testing for everyone, and we test for everything, including marijuana. And so the issue is, because it is constitutional, then how do we streamline that and not necessarily impact pre-employment for non-safety sensitive positions? So that's in essence what we're trying to get to. The issue, also our current policy is, anytime anyone is involved in an accident, a car accident, it's automatically, you're tested. We also currently have, for impairment, right? So reasonable suspicion for impairment on the job, then that too can also allow management to pursue testing of the employee while they're working.
So I know the sheriff's department already has a policy in place for their safety sensitive, and the federal government already has a policy in place for the CDLs. So I'm looking at this list, and I understand that we want to come up with a policy for safety sensitive, non-safety sensitive positions, but looking at some of this stuff, I don't think a lot of these positions on this list should be classified as safety sensitive. I think, you know, like I said, I think 95% of the county is now going to be classified as safety sensitive. So I'm not going to vote in favor of this. I'm going to join Commissioner Carpenter. I think, like I said last week, I said a lot last week, and I'm not going to get myself in trouble this week, but I think this list is way too much. I think it's overkill. I think we're worrying more about use than impairment. And because of that, I'm going to be voting no, especially since, you know, the CDLs, the operators, and the sheriff's department already have their policy in place, so. And because it doesn't seem like there's a problem that we need to address, because you guys have said that there are no claims this year, there was no risk last year, so it just seems like there's not really a problem that needs to be addressed with this. I think we should be going back and trying to figure out what is actually a safety sensitive position.
And if I could touch base on that again, this definition was sent out to departments who took a look at it. And you're right, it is very broad. So sometimes when you think of safety sensitive, if those individuals are operating machinery and equipment, right, those are typically easy, because they could, if they're impaired, and this is really all about doing your job under impairment, they could hurt themselves, they could hurt colleagues, they could hurt the public. So that is, I think, when everybody thinks of safety sensitive, we took it a little broader in the aspect that, you know, it's not just about operating equipment, but many of our employees are involved to sensitive information that could do damage to a resident or to a colleague. And so if you're doing your job impaired and you make some errors of releasing information or doing something, we felt like, again, taking the bigger picture, that is a safety sensitive. So I agree, it is very broad.
But I mean, mistakes can be made without impairment, right? We had somebody put somebody's social security information on a public agenda, and I wouldn't say that person has a safety sensitive position, you know? It just seems like we're trying to solve a problem that's not a problem. We already have policy in place. Sheriff's Department has policy in place. And looking at this list and looking at everybody in here, I think Megan from Tourism is the only non-safety sensitive position. So I don't know. I'm going to be voting no on this. I just think I don't think there's a problem. I think this is and I just think this is just overkill. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you. Commissioner Lawson.
Well, I'm kind of the other way. If I had my druthers, it'd be stronger than it is. But I looked this over really well, read it before I came today, and I think it's adequate. Here's the thing. You've got so many people that get behind a vehicle, not just our road crews, but you've also got the guys that go out and do assessments. You got the people that go out and go to other places in the county and do things for the internet. You know, you've got all those people out driving around. We didn't have the availability legally of marijuana in the past. Now we do. So I think we have to take that into account. The other thing is, if you think about it, a lot of people are sensitive, and you're right. You can make a bad mistake and not be high, that's for sure. But the fact that if somebody has this hanging over their head, I feel that they will be more apt to be cautious about what they do. Somebody in the internet area could knock us out completely, could do all kinds of damage. You know, it's not going to take somebody's life, but it sure costs us a lot of money. I think it's our responsibility to try to maybe be overly cautious on some of these things. Because if somebody has an accident, they're high, we don't have something in place, something bad happens, they could sue our britches off. So, you know, as far as I'm concerned, I think this isn't, it isn't perfect, but it's adequate. And I think that times change, policies need to change. I don't see anything wrong with this at all. So for my money, I think it's fine.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yes, thank you. First of all, Kim, thank you very much to you and your staff for putting this together. I know this isn't easy. It's a tough process. And, you know, to answer, I think one of Commissioner Withington's questions is, you know, what problem are we trying to address? One of the problems is the new change to the Constitution, which legalizes marijuana. So I think that's the biggest thing that we really need to address. How does that play into the workplace? Obviously, and as Commissioner Carpenter said, you know, as part of whether we like it or not, as part of the democratic process, that the problem is it's not a perfect law, and it's hard to make a perfect policy for a non-perfect law. And one of the issues I have with the law is the democratic process created this, but the democratic process also created a federal law that says it's illegal. State law doesn't trump federal law. But there's a problem with that. It doesn't jive, and we're not fixing that. But we have to have a policy that kind of addresses that. And how do we address that? Do we lean towards the federal side, or do we lean towards the state side? There's just all sorts of things that kind of booger this up. So the way I see this is a living document. This is something that you know, we have to be, I think, somewhat proactive on this, and I think that we are with this. I think, like Commissioner Lawson said, I think this is probably as good as we can get for now, but it could change as we go, and we can add and subtract and address it as we go, and as our experience and as the laws and some of the case law might change from here on out. But I think, in my mind, my opinion, is this is probably the best we can get to a not quite perfect policy that's a living policy that can change as we go. And with that, I don't know what I would want to see different in this at this point. So with that, and I don't see anybody, oh, never mind. I was going to put a motion on to approve. But
You could go ahead and do that, because once the motions have been made, then we open it up for further discussion. So if you'd like to make your motion, certainly Commissioner Wagner will have his opportunity to speak.
Okay, move to approve 2024-73.
Motion has been made for the approval of 2024-73. We will now enter into further discussion. Did you have anything you wanted to add, Commissioner Johnson? Jones, I'm sorry. Commissioner Wagner. Oh, I'm sorry. There we are.
There you go. Thank you. Well, to kind of jump to the end, I will support the motion. I will, but just to note, first of all, thank you again, Kim. I think I requested the list. I appreciate you producing it. I'll just make 2 points because I think everyone's probably knows what they're going to do. One is government's always held to a higher standard. We always are. And to the extent that risk is left out there, that risk creates opportunity for various suits, various judgments, and so on and so forth. And so I think we cannot be silent. We have to say something as to how we do our business, and this does that. I would also just simply note that as I look at how testing is to be done, your requirements are under pre-employment, if there's reasonable suspicion, and if it's post-accident, which is what we already do. So if there are those who wish to take part in their constitutional rights, they can. Just be wary of these 3 events. And so I tend to think, as has been said, that this will change when the industry that has to monitor risk decides to make changes. Other changes will come down the road. But I think, if anything, you create greater risk for us if you are silent on this subject. I think you've got to say, here's how you're going to handle it. For that reason, I will support the motion today. Thank you. I'll
go ahead and comment before I go to Commissioner Carpenter again. the observations that I get from this are these. That is that I think there is reason to go forward with this policy because the constitutional amendment does change the legal playing field, and I think we should be addressing that. So I think that in and of itself is a good reason for us to be addressing it in this way. I think the way it's being addressed demonstrates a good faith effort on the part of the county government to make sure that we are doing something that is within reason and is a prudent step forward. And the last thing is something that I've observed in my time, just observing human nature and discussions, is when you've got two sides who hold different views, and one of them thinks it's too stringent, the other thinks it's too lax. My guess is it seems to hit it down the middle. So in that case, we seem to, I think, landed on something that is at least palatable to all to some degree. So I want to commend you for coming up with something that is, I would hope would be seen as being in the reasonable middle. So thank you for the effort you've done. This is a tough subject, and it's been the object of a lot of discussion here among ourselves and probably outside this chamber. So the hard work that you put forward is certainly appreciated. Commissioner Carpenter, I believe you are seeking recognition.
Thank you, Commissioner. And yes, thank you, Kim, very much. Just like I said last week, very grateful to all your work on this. So just a couple things. I'm going to have one or two questions, I think, for County Council in a moment. But first, on Commissioner Wagner mentioned it, said something to the effect of, I'll paraphrase, if you choose to engage in your constitutional right, just, be wary of the three ways where it might impact you. And on two of those, I'm perfectly comfortable. So one is post-accident investigation. One is you've been flagged by your supervisor for being inebriated or high at work. Perfectly comfortable with implementing recourse in those two situations. The third is the more complicated one. It's the one I talked about last week, which is the pre-employment screening, in which the person has not done anything wrong. They have not shown up to work inebriated. They have not gotten into an accident while on the job. So in that situation, they've done nothing wrong. And applying the phrasing there of if you choose to engage in your constitutional right, just be wary of a pre-employment ban on employment. I think that's a dicey thing to say. And so to the extent that we're talking about avoiding lawsuits here, because I agree, we should take into account liability concerns and seek to avoid lawsuit, protect the taxpayer dime. I think Commissioner Withington makes a good point in that doesn't seem to have been a significant issue to date on this issue, but that being said, it's a thing to think about. But so is the flip side, which is when we publicly say at a meeting like this that if you choose to engage in your constitutional right, that one of the penalties for that may be you're denied employment by a public sector employer. I think that's what opens us up to potential lawsuits, more so than the other situation, especially since we've had policy in place to deal with folks showing up intoxicated to work and workplace incidents. So my question for council is, obviously this is in the Constitution now, it's a constitutional right just like any other. Anytime you're talking about abrogating a constitutional right, the standard is strict scrutiny. Please correct me if I'm wrong. My question is, do you think that would apply hypothetically in a situation like this? And given that we've declared our policy to be quite broad, and I would say 90+% of employees covered as safety sensitive is indeed quite broad. Given that there are two standards, one is compelling state interest and the other is narrowly tailored, do you have any concerns on the narrowly tailored side of the equation there?
I have concerns about everything involving the drug and alcohol policy. I mean, we are threading a needle between the rights of our employees, the safety of our citizens, the prohibitions of the federal government, and the permission of the state government or the state constitution. I mean, and when I say threading that needle, that's what I mean. And I'm not even sure there's a way to thread it completely right. And that's because of the tension between the state and federal requirements here. So am I comfortable with this? Absolutely not. I mean, am I comfortable that we know the answers, how a claim that's going to come from this is going to play out? Absolutely not. There's a reason that everyone is kind of in a bunker waiting to see how a court is going to define some of this and interpret some of this, because nobody wants to be the first one out of the bunker. And, the reality is, this policy is going to change, and probably change quickly once we start getting some guidance. And, I'm not comfortable with it. I think, I understand the reason to do it. I think we need to have a policy. I think government particularly, we need to have a policy. We can't just ignore things. This is an adequate policy, to use another term I heard. Do I expect this policy to be unchanged in the next 2 years? No, I expect it to change. Am I comfortable with it? No. Am I comfortable with doing nothing? No.
Well, yeah, and to be clear on that point, I'm not comfortable doing nothing either, which is why the compromise that I floated was that we do a safety-sensitive carve-out. But again, on the narrowly tailored piece, obviously, we're on the broad end of narrow.
And if I may on that, you're voting on this policy. As it stands right now, you're not voting on the safety-sensitive. The safety-sensitive concept is in the policy. The list of safety-sensitive positions is not. I believe that the prudent thing that will happen is we will continue to work on what that means. Because right now, the individual offices have kind of said, here's who we think they are. What I don't want to do is if we get some guidance or we get some decisions or we work with our carrier and things change, I don't want to have to come back to you every time to say, okay, now we need to take this one position off or add this one position. I think it's going to be a very fluid document on the safety sensitive part, and we're going to constantly make adjustments to it. Because I think right now, I agree, I think it's reasonably broad. I do, and I think it could easily be narrowed down. And that very well may happen, and it may happen soon. So you're not voting, at least as it stands here, you're not voting on the list of the safety-sensitive positions. You're voting on a policy that incorporates a concept that we do have safety-sensitive positions. That will change with some frequency, most likely, at least initially. I do anticipate my office being way more involved in this than we ever have been before. And that's just a reflection of the tension between all the different authorities involved. And that's a long answer, and I hope I got to what you were asking.
Yeah, no, very helpful.
So understand, this isn't, we pass it, everybody puts their head in the sand, we all pat ourselves on the back. This will be very much a living document, and very much, I do believe we will be very proactive in working on this to the extent, and I've already received calls, we've talked about this more than most anything in the last couple of years. We will probably talk very soon again about whether certain positions should be safety sensitive. What you have in front of you is the most current iteration of that, but certainly not the definitive iteration.
Yeah, actually, just one quick question. In terms of awaiting further guidance, can you give a little more clarity to, you said over the next couple of years we'll get additional guidance?
We have a constitution that now gives rights to people with regard to their use of marijuana, both in public, in employment, right, medical. We have that, and people are really good about understanding their rights, or at least knowing that they have rights. And so when someone feels that they've been aggrieved, we will start to see claims being made, and I believe we will start to get guidance from the courts. Now that's a longer process. I think we will also, as the county, get guidance and recommendations from our insurance carrier, which is very common. And I expect that may happen as other counties institute policies, as other states get court decisions, because there are a number of states ahead of us. And I expect once those decisions start coming down with some frequency, other states will follow in line with the same thing.
Yeah, makes sense.
That's what I think.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, I think I've said my piece on it. Appreciate you listening and ready to vote. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. And as always, we want to hear all views. So certainly giving any commissioner, yourself or any other commissioner, the opportunity to express their views fully is certainly something we want to make sure that we honor. I'm going to go to Commissioner Johnson next, but before I do, I'm going to ask, because this is the subjects have been discussed a lot, so I'm going to see if there's anyone from the public who would like to make any comment. Then I'll go. I don't see any other commissioners seeking recognition, so I'll go to you for whatever remarks you'd care to make, and then for closure. So is there anyone here from the public wishing to comment on this? Seeing none, Commissioner Johnson, you are recognized.
One comment I just wanted to make before I close is, I forgot to say it before, it's been mentioned by a couple of my colleagues, the broadness of the safety sensitive, and that may end up clearing up itself. But at this point, I'm happy with relying on our management and our department heads and their expertise on what they think positions, which of their positions should be considered safety sensitive, until we get further direction from either the courts or or laws or something along that line. So I don't have as much heartache as that, but I certainly understand why some of my colleagues do and why they do think maybe it could be too broad. But right now, I'm putting my trust, my default goes to our management and our department heads. So with that, I close.
Thank you. Motion's been made for the approval of 2024-73. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Withington,
No.
Commissioner Lawson,
Yes.
Commissioner Wagner,
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson,
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter.
No.
Motion passes 4-2.
Thank you. And that brings us to the conclusion of our regular agenda. Next on our agenda are discussion items. I believe we have, yes, only one issue on that. Administrator, if you'd like to proceed.
Yes, just one brief topic for discussion this evening. So the county's property and casualty insurance is coming up for renewal March 15th. And as always, we like to bring forward our broker with CBIZ to come and at least kind of share what are they seeing in the market, what are the preliminary discussions that they've had regarding the county's renewal. So I'm going to turn it over to our risk manager, Christine Puls, who's going to introduce CBIZ.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for having me, Christine Puls, Risk Manager. It's that time of year again, everybody's favorite renewal. That would be property and casualty. As Diana mentioned, the policy expires March 15th. The county began gathering information we needed to renew back in November of 2023. And it's definitely a team effort to put this information together. And I just wanted to thank my peers for prioritizing my request. And every single department got all the information back to me well ahead of the deadline given. So that was awesome. So thank you to the auditor's office, HR, again, shout out to them because they were still working on open enrollment, Parks, the purchasing department, IT, and the sheriff's office. So there's a lot of people who work on this with a lot of information that goes into it. Our insurance broker, CBIZ, they've been working on our behalf, and tonight, Sales Executive Tom McGuire here is to talk, like Diana said, about the climate of public entity insurance, some trends they're seeing with renewals, and just general information on how our renewal is shaping up. So with that, I will invite Tom up. Don't know how to get to the next page. Let's do this.
You may have to use the arrows.
Yeah.
Thank you again. Again, Tom McGuire with CBIZ Insurance. I would, in a perfect world, would be coming here and have everything completely buttoned up for the renewal, but we're very close, but not quite there yet. So I'm going to kind of give you a general overview of what we're seeing in the market and then kind of where we're at, Clay County specific. Feel like I've been a little bit of a broken record the last 4 years. The market continues to be hard, which means prices continue to increase, deductibles continue to increase, capacity from the amount of carriers that want to insure entities like Clay County continues to decrease. So that puts pressure on the remaining markets in order to provide, favorable terms. The key driver of that continues to be convective storms. We're still seeing weather-related issues across the Midwest. I think it was again in this last year we had countrywide 20 different weather-related instances that created $1 billion each worth of property damage across the country. So that's driving a lot of what is the hard market. Carriers are reevaluating deductibles or continue to push those up, especially when it comes to wind and hail, which is obviously the convective storm. And then finally, as they've addressed the convective storm issue from the Midwest, now they're turning their attention to building values. And so building values are coming under greater scrutiny. Last year, we did do a building valuation here at Clay County and increased, especially the Justice Center, by a substantial amount. And this was a third-party outside appraisal company that came on site to do that. And this year, those buildings are getting trended up due to inflation and construction costs and things of that nature, so we're battling that as well. Clay County specifically, initially, I am happy to report this at this point. Initially, Travelers came out, who is our current provider, and wanted 40% rate increase on the property line. And so that doesn't take into an account anything that has to do with building values increasing. That's just straight increase in rate that they're charging. We were able to negotiate that down to 10% at this point. So we had a positive result there. The 10% actually is under what we're seeing in the marketplace in the Midwest. So we're doing better than what we've seen across our book and across, the region. On top of the property issues that we're facing, auto continues to be problematic and law enforcement continues to be problematic. Law enforcement is one of those things that's kind of a catch-22. Carriers have decided that they charge by the amount of law enforcement officers that we do have, but then they've come back and given us guidance that when we're not fully staffed, they're actually going to charge us more because we're not fully staffed, so they're kind of getting it on, in typical fashion. I always say they don't build big buildings and employ all these people because they lose money. So we also are, Clay County came out of a pool several years ago, an insurance pool, and moved to Travelers before we were involved. Pools tend to have heavy limits, high limits, so we're reevaluating and benchmarking some of those limits to make sure that we're in line with other like municipalities across the region. We want to make sure we have enough coverage, but we don't want to be necessarily overinsured, so we're going to be providing some benchmarking data and some options, especially on the umbrella limit. That seems to be the one that kind of stuck out to us as we were looking at that. So hopefully we're going to have this finished up in the very near future and be presenting the final numbers to staff. We are engaged with several carriers on the work comp. That's kind of what's driving it towards the end of, or taking a little bit longer to make sure that we're getting the best possible pricing for the county.
Commissioner Withington?
I just want to say thanks for coming out and presenting all this. Look forward to seeing the final results. But Christine, you sat here and you thanked everybody. I just want to say thank you for everything you do. You're always working hard to keep this county safe and to look out for risk and to also, make sure our employees are safe. So I just want you to be recognized for your hard work. So thank you for everything you do.
Any other commissioners have any comments or questions that they would like to make at this time? Commissioner Wagner.
Thank you. Just a couple quick ones. I noticed your comment, Tom, related to the shrinking number of carriers in this space, and just wanted to understand that a little bit more. Is it these carriers are folding, or these carriers are just dropping this category entirely?
That's a great question. So in the way that the program is structured, the insurance program for Clay County is structured currently, has probably been the part that's been hardest hit from a capacity standpoint. If we were standing up here 3 to 4 years ago, we would have had 3 to 4 carriers that were really interested in insuring an entity like Clay County. Right now, the only one that will take property through the work comp, every line of coverage is Travelers. And so when you start looking at alternatives to that, it requires chopping up the insurance between 4 and 5, sometimes carriers. And you tend to lose efficiencies on that. Now, the good thing for us and for the county is Travelers is a tried and true market for public entities and has been around insuring public entities for quite some time. So they have not pulled out of the market. It's not that the carriers are folding altogether. It's just that they're choosing with convective storms and law enforcement are the two big ones that they've decided to take their capacity elsewhere and insure other types of businesses.
I gotcha. Oh, and actually your comment led to the other question, which it strikes me that if coverage across all sectors is potentially a 40% rate increase, it would seem to me if that were a consistent risk, that the idea of then splitting up those various categories into various coverages, although not necessarily efficient, I wonder if at the end of the day, the dollars and cents of it makes it a possible way of going about doing this. Although, since you got 10%, maybe that's less of an issue. Which good job. Don't know how you did it, or if you extorted someone, which I'm sure you did not. But good job, nevertheless.
Twisted a few arms, right?
Right.
Well, you know, the property is the real problematic piece right now, which is why they were trying to drive that. So, you know, getting that below what we're seeing from a trend standpoint, and, you know, for the first 15 years of my career, I always joked with the benefits people, they talk trend, and we were more flat, and I didn't have to talk trend. Now I'm having to talk trend. But when we got that down to that 10%, just from the amount of other entities that we insure, we knew that was going to be a positive result, as opposed to going out and, not that we're never not talking to carriers to make sure to know where they're at, but we were happy with that result, as happy as you can be. I don't like any increase, but as happy as you could be in the market that we're in.
No, I understand. And last question is then, basically, based on those trends, is there a point that you reach, whether that's a potential 40% rate increase or higher or lower than that, where you say, you know what, let's split this business up and see if we can get the total rate for everything down? Or is that hard to even project?
I think that's something we're looking at all the time.
Yeah.
Especially for an entity of your size, it can start making some sense. Right now, with where we're at, our talkings with the market, you know, I think it'll probably end up with Travelers, but, you know, we're always evaluating whether or not there's a better. But even to find entities or carriers that are willing to just write the property sometimes can be problematic. And it used to be that, you know, if you had these big schedules, which we have a fairly large schedule of buildings and value, that, you know, you had them lined up 6, 7, 8 years ago because they wanted the premium, and now they don't want the premium because they don't want the concentration of buildings in a small area.
Understood. Okay. Thank you very much, Tom. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you also, not only yourself, but the hard work of all our staff to put together the best possible arrangement for the county to participate in. Obviously, we need to provide this to our employees, but you certainly do your best, as do our staff people, to make sure that it is the most cost-effective way possible. So certainly we appreciate that hard work.
And I will echo, the staff is always great to work with, and whenever we ask them for information, which you'd be shocked at the amount we ask them for, they always provide it timely.
Are there any other comments before we close the discussion? Very well. Do you need anything, any consensus from us, Administrator, or do you have what you need?
No, we just wanted to give you somewhat of an update on what we were seeing, and this is planned to be on your next meeting on March 7th for approval to renew and assign those insurance carriers in time for our March 15th renewal.
Thank you very much. With that, we will close this discussion and we will move on to the next item of business, which is County Administrator comments. Administrator?
Just one item, and that is that there will be no commission meeting next week. And the next commission meeting is Thursday, March 7th at 6 o'clock here in the chambers.
Thank you. That brings us to Commissioner comments. We will start with, I'm trying to think of where I started last. Commissioner Carpenter, you looked at me and smiled, so you get the short straw.
Thank you.
Commissioner Thompson. Commissioner Johnson. Commissioner Wagner or Commissioner Lawson?
I just have a quick comment.
Go ahead and push your button and I'll put you on.
Okay. A couple of things. I talked with the director of MAC today. He said he hasn't received anything from the county. No, no check or anything, and I didn't, he said he'd sent us a bill but hasn't gotten anything, so I'd like to see where we are on that. The other thing I want to say publicly is that after speaking with him, I was quite impressed. I very much am asking this commission to allow me to be one of those appointed to the MAC board. So when the time comes, just keep me in the back of your mind. Remember the name Joe Ann Lawson. I appreciate it. That's all I got.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Withington.
So I don't have any real comment, but I just want to say thank you to Director John Davis. Had a couple constituents reach out to me about some issues at the Parks Department, and John was within an hour, he had responded to both of them, and he was able to take care of the issues, so I appreciate your help on that. Thank you.
The only comment I have has to do with our dress code, although we don't have one, and that is I couldn't help but notice I'm the only one wearing a tie this evening. And I guess I'd like to make comment that not only is it a dapper fashion statement on my part, but it is adequate to disguise the fact that I have probably a few more pounds than I need to have carrying around, and so it disguises the gap in my shirt button. So certainly it's not enough to be fashion forward, but there is function to that. So I just want to make mention of that. That concludes Commissioner comments. Next are executive sessions. Is there a motion related to our executive sessions? Commissioner Johnson.
I move to adjourn to executive session. Did I say that right?
Correct, yes.
Do I need the RSMO
Yes.
statute? Sorry. Per RSMO statute 610.021, parentheses 2, and 610.021, parentheses 12.
And to adjourn therefrom.
Pardon me?
And to adjourn therefrom.
And to adjourn therefrom.
No, that was great. That was great. We're picking up the lingo. You're a pro.
And by the way, if a tie makes you look thinner, I'm going to wear 3 of them next week.
Motion has been made to go into executive session under Missouri's statute, RSMO 610.021, parentheses 2, real estate, and 610.021, parentheses 12, contractual, and to adjourn therefrom. That motion is on the floor. Commissioner Withington, I believe you're seeking recognition?
I hit the button to vote, so.
Oh, no problem. Discussion? Seeing none, you are recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Withington?
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson?
Yes.
Commissioner Wagner?
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
With that, we will go into executive session under the items listed in the motion and adjourn therefrom. Thank you very much.